postscript.
Yeah. Yeah, this one was pretty banging.
Pretty, 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 pretty banging.
Yeah.
Pretty banging.
He made the whole movement from well, what I'm being I've from transcendental to metaphysics. Right at the end, he goes into actual metaphysics, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, what an ending.
Yeah.
Don't let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go. Do you have notes or thoughts in like chronological order?
Um.
You don't have to. It's just the way I did.
Yeah. How about you? Go ahead. What do you got?
All right. I'm gonna share my screen. And do you have what is my stupid question? Um, do you have that drawing pad?
Yes. Do I have the drawing, like the physical one?
So just a way to draw on screen and
Yeah.
share your screen.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Because I have questions that are going to require that,
All right.
which
Just
we'll get to
preemptively
here.
share my screen.
Yeah. Let's get ourselves together here. Do this
Uh,
like we're professionals, because we are obviously.
we are definitely professionals.
I mean, you do have a monetized YouTube, correct?
We are being monetized. We haven't been deplatformed yet.
We are fucking
I
monetized. What
know
a
there's
post.
a whole lot of hullabaloo about
A
us.
Hubble? There's a whole lot of Hubble.
There's a whole
Oh,
lot
I
of
love it.
hullabaloo about us being demonetized, but
Oh yeah, we were on that
our our
podcast,
our YouTube
and they
agent has
were.
kept the lawyers at bay. I
Thank God for our
know.
agent. That goddamn Jew. He's great. Let's see here. I'm trying to even it out. Perfect. Um, looks like my stream is aligned. All right, let's fucking do this. Yeah. So this like solidified an idea in my head that we should to like keep us. I feel like when we're while throwing in articles I really like that. For this next portion, I so enjoyed this. I just want like I know I want to read the Kant thing. I think we should dual book it and go another Russell book side by side with the Kant, and then if we want, we can take a break from Russell certain days or weeks to do, let's say, an article you want to read or what have you, because that's how much I like this. I was like,
Oh yeah,
fucking Russell. I just
yeah.
want to read everything he fucking has because he's
Mm-hmm.
so. It sounds so like obviously I don't want to just bask in like people that agree with me,
Yeah.
but like he thinks so much how I either think or want to think about the world. So the way he maneuvers through philosophy is very uh it's ideal. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh,
They're
I'm
not the
I'm totally happy to do that. Yeah, the I think the next very relevant one would be logic. It's either mysticism and logic or logic and mysticism. Is there? It's really like just a collection of somewhat thematically related essays that he wrote over a like a period, within 10 years, I believe, at least, if not within a couple of years, that they just you know chunked together into a book. I think that would be pretty cool. Uh, yeah, there's obviously a shit ton of stuff he's written, so we can look at stuff. But I believe that kind of comes a little bit after this logical atomism, uh, temporally speaking. I don't know exactly. I'm sure obviously it has some thematics related to it. If you would like, we could also take a dip. We are not going to read by any means even 10% of the Principia Mathematica, but we could poke around at it.
the we're gonna get into that. And in fact, the thing I was googling right now is the history of arithmetic, not for an entire story of it, but I would like to get right in this introduction. Right, he talks about the truth of arithmetic. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let me find the page. I've got it all numbered and shit. Let's get to the beginning of this. So the first thing he talks about is, well, I really like these two lines or passages, that I could alter my view on this issue without changing my mind as to any of the doctrines upon which I wish to lay stress. And in that context, he's talking about realism.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, from my interpretation, would be the contrary would be is it idealism or yes.
Yes, like either ontological or metaphysical idealism. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's using it between those two, right? Uh, Epistemological or the alternate. He's kind of using it in a fluid manner. But what he's generally saying is that he has a form. I feel like this is a metaphor for how he looks at the world. He uses a drainage pipe, like a process and function that he puts all of his thoughts through, right? And he could easily use those exact same functions to cookie cutter and then become an idealist,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but based, and that's what he means by saying, without changing my mind, right, as to any of the doctrines upon which I lay stress.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe now that I'm reading that back, I misunderstood. But my first interpretation was essentially, I have these ways that I process the world, not view the world, but process the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And without changing how I inspect the world itself or lay stress upon these ideas, I could come to an idealist perspective using those same functions without really changing, how he came to those conclusions. So he could alter his view without changing his mind as to the doctrines.
Yeah. You're definitely right. You're definitely right on that. That he's more concerned about the how you come to say certain things as opposed towards what it is that you're saying. Um, and in a lot of ways, actually, like even later, like clearly it's not too big of a leap to he sounds like a very rational, scientific kind of guy to think that he's just a regular realist. There are things out there, and they do exist separately from us, but and a lot of what he talks about in this section, he talks about like matter as it is a construct. It's a logical construct, which in his world is a fiction. We're just fucking made it up because it's convenient. Like his reasons for believing in it, or at least, well, the reason he would think it is good to possibly think about it is not because it's true or whatever, but because of how useful or the consequences of it are. Um, yeah.
Get on your stream.
Um,
Yeah, and so you make a good point there, and to even build on that, this is how I echo the world. Is when somebody asks me my thoughts, right? And they may ask me, "Are you a Democrat?" Right?
mm-hmm.
Are you a Republican? But when I respond, am I a neo shill for the fucking establishment of capitalism to overthrow the new? It's just like kill yourself. But more importantly, how I answer that is based on my audience.
Right.
Meaning, and that is the way I feel, because I want to. If I'm talking to someone who understands or who I trust, I would gladly say I'm a realist. But the stigma, the baggage that claim, that word brings to the conversation. If I'm talking to a realist who is the fucking psychotically, like, nothing, outside of the physical world exists, then you just, I would never say I'm a realist to that person. And if I would talk to an idealist, I would say, well, you probably think of me as a realist, but I believe in X, Y, and Z, which are outside of realism, right?
Yeah.
And I so empathize with that, because it's like he is so tepid to use or pussyfooting. That's not a good way to use it, but you get the idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cautious to say the word realism when applying to himself, because of the baggage.
Right. Yeah. Because so his concern mainly is not actually with regular old ontology or metaphysics. His concern is with, and this is what we'll definitely be getting into with the Kant stuff, is transcendental philosophy, which he never really says right out, but that's what the majority of this book is. transcendental philosophy is concerned with the conditions of the possibility of doing metaphysics. How is it that we're making claims about what's going on? And the majority of this book is what are the concepts that we're using, and how do our words possibly even relate to the world at all in the first place? And so he's not so much concerned about what's out there, but with how we're talking about what things we have in our own head.
Interesting. So it's not. Say that back last part again. It's not what we're thinking.
He's not so much concerned about what is actually in the world as much as how we are thinking about what's in the world.
It's that true metaphysics.
Yeah,
is transcendentalism. Contemporary understanding of metaphysics.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Generally speaking, yes. It just happens to be that like transcendental philosophy is a topic of metaphysics, but really metaphysics is a topic of transcendental philosophy. But whatever. And transcendental philosophy is
that again.
Mostly speaking, like if you're going to be put in a department or whatever, you could say I do metaphysics, but in a lot of ways you're largely going to be concerned with transcendental philosophy, and you could say that transcendental philosophy is a concern of metaphysics, because but really what it is that metaphysics is a subject
under transcendental philosophy.
Yeah, you have to,
so what would be other categories?
Metaphysics, you have to have you should have first have done transcendental philosophy, which Kant's big deal was that nobody really did that after we had Aristotle. People just fucking forgot about how it is we even possibly conceive of metaphysics. They just made assumptions about things by the time they were starting to say things about
presuppositions, essentially.
Yeah.
I could totally see that. It makes sense.
Yeah, and a large part of what Russell's also wanted to do is the other thing he laid, on the one hand he said I could shift between being a realist or an idealist depending. I don't really care. There are other things I care about which are not specifically that. What he does care about is the logic, and that the logic is fundamental into philosophy, which is really a claim about. It's a transcendental claim, which is that, what's more fundamental than metaphysics is how we even talk about metaphysics in the first place, and he's using logic to do that. And what he wants to say about logic is that he has a pluralism logic versus his Bradley and Hegel predecessors, or his teachers, who were a monologic or whatever, which, to be honest, I don't really get, and this is...
Before you move on, to build on your point, my favorite quote here is I hold logic is what is fundamental to philosophy, and that schools should be characterized rather by their logic than by their metaphysic, right? Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting it's almost wordplay, because we would say schools, I would assume schools of thought and not actual educational locations.
Yeah.
But educational locations do contain schools of thought. So if we were to use that, the meta-fucking irony in this is that a school would say our philosophy, you could apply his statement or his logic, so to speak, that they should be saying our logic instead of our philosophy.
Yeah.
The depth of that fucking sentence, right? Yep. Of potential ways to look at it, and it just I can see. I don't know if that's either 5 years of being able to think about these concepts and then revisit them, or just his progression through life, which is what makes me so excited to kind of step with him through his different writings, because that's such I don't know if he meant to be that deep, but it doesn't happen by accident.
I think he had a big implication.
It doesn't happen by accident as many times as he fucking goes through wordplay.
Because I think what's happened a whole lot is that he has these rather upsetting philosophical ideas. It's not so much upsetting in the mathematical departments that he would go and talk to.
Disturbing to the general discourse. It would disturb, and not in the loaded way.
Yeah, but when he's going and giving not metaphysics, when he's getting philosophy talks, people keep being like, well, what do you think actually exists? Do you think are you a realist? And mostly I think he just got annoyed that people kept trying to be like, do you think this or that? And he's like, I don't care. Like, do you think these types of things exist, or do you think those types of things exist? Like, do you think that there are, mind independent objects, or
It's like asking a ruler, do you like long things or short things? It's like, bro, I'm a ruler.
Yeah.
I measure things.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a tool for the world,
Mhm.
and then you come up to the tool and go, yeah, but what do you prefer?
Yeah,
It's like,
and
no,
I'm
no,
like,
no. I'm trying to stay agnostic. The whole point is you should step out of the category, your self-categorization or self-dogmatism,
yeah,
right?
like people, like it seems like people didn't really get the point of what he was saying, because most people, I mean, it is a very easy habit to just fall into immediately when it'd be like, well, what, what's your ontology or what's your metaphysics? Um, People are kind of forgetting that the important part of what he's saying is not so much about what your actual position is, but how are you, arriving at your position?
Arriving
How
in
are
it.
you constructing your position, and are you doing that in a valid and a sound way or whatever? And on the one hand, do you even understand that you're doing it, and in what way you are doing it? Because a lot of people probably, don't really even pay attention to how they're doing it. They just have a position.
This is so similar to, I don't know how much I'm sure I shoved it down your throat, how Mr. Girl would go about the world. Do you recall anything from Mr. Girl? And
I mean, a little bit. I do remember some of
so
his
you get
content, but not so much of his, like, if you could say, his more transcendental
his
thoughts.
logic.
His logic. Yeah.
So in 10 seconds, he got famous for saying in a review of the movie Cuties, which is where a director of a movie
Mm-hmm.
tries to make 12-year-olds and show how they make 12-year-olds in modern society sexualized, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's dances at school, there's TikToks, and they're all in skimpy clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mr. Girl doesn't want you to, he wants you to just have an alternate look at the world. And so what he would say in the review is, they make these children hot. Like,
Yeah.
I found them hot. And it's not, and then it's not, and that's problematic. Like, that's a problem that we were able to make 12-year-olds hot in this movie. Now, obviously, there's a bit of irony and it's a bit out there, right? But
Yeah.
then people in discussion are going to go, well, are you a pedophile? And that misses the overarching point of, because if he answers, now you're engaged in a am I a pedophile conversation. What he's trying to say is that we're all a little pedophilic, and that's a problem, right? We should stop sexualizing kids, right? It's not that I want to fuck them,
Yeah.
is the point, right? The point is, look at how I looked at this situation and try to just step out of this constraint that you have yourself in, which is being unable to
Yeah. Where they're
step
like,
out.
they're coming to him on like a much more like simple level. They're like, well, you clearly want to fuck kids, then you're a pedophile. We shouldn't listen to you. When really, like, he's trying to.
We should be able to listen to pedophiles. Like, they're not pedophile doesn't make you someone who cannot be spoken to. But that aside, yeah, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like, just like, so even just because you've wanted to do something doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever be listened to for anything at all. Like, we shouldn't totally discount whatever is going
Crimes.
on. Like, what if, I don't know, fucking Turing? What if he was a fucking pedophile and we were like, no, we won't let you, do computer stuff because you're clearly evil and all bad things come from evil stuff. So, and then
And all Disney should be removed because, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, we should totally just get rid of Disney and because there's
Kanye's songs should be removed from the radio because it's anti-Semitic instead of just like going like, hey, anti-Semitism is bad.
The similarity between, I guess, what Russell is doing and I guess what Mr. Rowe was doing is that they were trying to make a certain point on a certain dimension, and everybody else was coming at them on a
By
different
asking
dimension.
the question itself, are you a realist, misses.
Yeah.
And to be fair to the audience, they're doing what we expect them to do.
Oh, it's not surprising. Yeah.
So you have to bridge the gap for the viewer, so to speak, right? And the person that misses the point,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's going to happen because we're all kind of in this, system. But hopefully, me and you, who are brighter than everyone,
Of course.
should be able to hear things like that and go, all right, fuck, that was a rough sentence. That Cuties, the 12-year-olds were hot, right? But is there something I can derive of meaning from this, or am I being trolled, right? And if you roll, and as long as you can roll out that you're being fucked with, right, or a joke, and you approach it with some sort of mental openness, you can derive that, look, I'm not in this realist or idealist camp. Yes, technically I could define myself, but the point is we shouldn't.
Yeah,
It's
because Mr. Girl
reductive.
could have gone yes or no, I am a pedophile, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that people are
Yes,
trying to sexualize kids.
I could give you the answer, and Mr. Girl won't answer because it's funny, right? It's funny to have someone ask him if he's a pedophile and then go, no comment, right? Because it's funny, right? And now the dummy is gonna try to pry from him that he's a pedophile and miss the point for an hour, right? Anyway, sorry, that's such a it's amazing. We're on page 1, and we just have so many fractals and just from this one paragraph. Before we continue, any other thoughts on this section?
Nope.
The next point in my notes is.
Oh, hold up, sorry. Okay, this is significant. Russell could no longer believe that knowing makes any difference to what is known.
Where is this?
So let me.
And I got my book on my screen.
Yeah, I have. My problem is that my page numbers are different. I'm gonna find the.
So I'm paragraph 2.
Yeah, it is
right
the second
now.
Paragraph. It's after there's a 1980 or 1898.
For some years, I was disciple of Bradley.
Yeah. For some years, I was a disciple of Mr. Bradley, but about 1898, I changed my views, and largely as a result of arguments with G.E. Moore, I could no longer believe that knowing makes any difference to what is known. And
no longer believe that knowing makes any difference to what is known. So the subject of the knowledge does not change, is unchangeable in the binary of knowing about it or not.
Well, it doesn't determine the object of what is known in any way. So this is significant. Well, this will come up in Kant again, which is that his big. You'll hear about the Copernican revolution in Kant a lot. That'll come up a lot of times. This is one of like the first things they talk about. It's that what Kant did is that he decided to change a proposition. From the tradition. So the tradition says that we have to conform our knowledge to objects, and that we're always having to change and approach what's really going on. Whereas what Kant did is that he basically had assumed to be true to see if it's useful, is to say that objects themselves have to conform themselves to how we know them. Namely by means of intuition, which is space and time. So that objects in themselves, separate from humans, are neither in space nor in time. Like, those concepts don't make sense to them. They have to fit themselves into the way that we know them, which is temporally and spatially. Whereas Russell here is going to go, no, that we don't actually change anything that's going on in the object itself. Which I think.
So is this to say? Let me try to make an analogy and see if I'm aligning. And it might have just been that last piece. That an atom is always an atom. Before we know it, there was always bacteria on our hands before we knew it.
Mm-hmm. Well. Yeah. Well, yeah, sort of. So the other thing you gotta be careful about is that, at least with. There's a nefarious piece of Kant where the thing in itself, the actual bacteria itself,
the matter of fact,
know it, but as an object of experience, it had to become spatial and temporal. It didn't have that itself. We put it into that.
We put it in space and time?
Yep.
So nothing is in space and time?
Without humans, yeah. Yep, that is the Kant position.
Hold on. So nothing is in space and time. So, I mean, I guess that would be a completely idealist notion.
It's a very idealist one, yeah. That still says that there are objects independent of mind, which is why you get a very interesting there's a weird...
let me test let me test this. So if I were to think about a sensory that we do not have, like a good example would be sharks. Sharks can detect motion in the ocean. No pun intended. So like like they have electric sensory to some degree.
Yep.
Right. So when the positive or negative polarity in the water changes, right? It's beyond motion, it's beyond just the blood in the water. They have some sort of sixth sense we don't have. Is that in time and space? Well, I guess now I'm talking about experience, so that's just analogous. We're talking about knowledge, or is not?
Yeah, things. So that's the things that. Well, I think you have to say that the shark does have a mind, and it is having experience, and it's shit. Like even without humans around, there's still really there's a mind that is observing things, and it is putting the magnetic polarity and stuff into space and time. This is according to Kant. Just.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah,
but he would agree. But Russell would agree, though.
No, Russell disagrees because he says I could no longer believe that knowing makes any difference to what is known.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, yep. I thought he agreed. So he disagrees. Yeah, because I disagree.
Yeah.
So obviously Russell disagrees because we're the same.
Yes. And this is a transcendental point because it tells us how we even talk about objects in the first place. So, just I guess to harp.
What do you mean by transcendental point?
Yes, we are still on the transcendental.
A transcendental. When you say that, in my mind, I switch it with metaphysics, right? To talk about
metaphysics. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yep.
Okay. All right. So say that sentence again. With the transcendental.
Oh, that they're making a claim not about objects in the actual, like what is possibly or is in the actual world, but how it is that we even begin to conceive of what objects are like in the world. Kant would say that we have to, that they have to adhere to us to some degree or another, and then, Russell's going to say, with most of the tradition, really.
What does Hegel say on that?
Probably he's going to be in the same Kant-esque arena.
Right. He wouldn't disagree. Or Hume
correct.
Or any of them. They wouldn't disagree with that idea.
I think in a lot of ways he's more extreme on that position than Kant is. It feels that way.
So without humans, now to continue the meta, sorry, the idea of that, would we say, obviously, even from a quote unquote realist standpoint, I could say time and space is a social construct. Therefore, without knowledge, your human knowledge, right, that would not apply. But I assume that that's not what they mean. They literally mean, fuck. So how does it not exist? It doesn't exist as a concept? That I can get behind.
No, it is a concept. Time and okay. Well, let me be clear. Okay, no. Time and space are intuitions, which are forms of representation. They're a way that we represent objects to us, and then then the understanding is a separate faculty that then takes the representations in space and time.
But are they saying the concept doesn't exist without knowledge of it? Because that I can get behind. Do you see what I'm saying? Or should I elucidate?
The concept of space and time doesn't exist. The concept of space and time, well,
with a fact of matter before knowledge of it, the concept space and time, well, the fact of the matter. Let's just talk about time, for example. The fact of the matter that time is something that is, temporal, to be tautological, right, is a thing that we talk about over the history and different ways to say the word time. That is a thing that is a concept, like minutes, for example, is a concept that humans constructed. And before we had the knowledge and created the concept, I would also say, well, duh, because the concept didn't exist before humans.
Right.
But there is a fact of the matter of time, meaning sharks live for 10 years or whatever it is, or 20, regardless of humans on Earth. Would Kant say that sharks just don't live for 10 years or 20 years? Or is it that because we cannot speak of time before humans created it. Like that's such a mind fuck.
Yes, it is a mind fuck. I wouldn't spend too long on this because
We could talk about this. Could be a whole episode.
It is the biggest mind fuck of the history of philosophy, I think, in a lot of ways. Yeah, and then you get the weird, then you get the weird it being kind of confirmed by quantum physics, which is a whole other fun topic.
I don't even know. So that's interesting. There's a section in here on my notes where I'm just like, have John graph out or draw about his concept of how metaphysics or quantum physics ties in, because I just don't. I know the particle theory and all those dumb fucking like cliche.
Oh yeah,
topics
I don't really know if I'm gonna know much more than like you talk because he does talk for a while.
I don't know the first thing about quantum mechanics
I mean,
or quantum physics.
Yeah, I don't think I really. I would be surprised if I knew much more than you. But I'm aware.
We know the definition, which I don't even think I have.
I don't know if I know the definition. It's just the science of things that are real fucking small. Under a certain point. I don't know what the point is. Like,
it's golden.
Yes.
All right, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. All right, let's plow ahead. We've one sentence.
Oh, okay. So are you talking about the point where he starts talking about like what is like philosophy doing is in a lot of ways it's an interpretation of what's there was some good shit on that where he's
we'll get to it. Okay. I'm gonna keep us, if it's okay with you, pretty on rail because it's so dense.
Yeah.
I think going through it chronologically is gonna be important.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it builds. So my next note. Let's see here. So he says, finding. So through mathematics, he talks about finding knowledge. Let's see here. That was important. And then he talks about the truth of arithmetic. Let's see. Here it is. For me, it's still the second paragraph, but up a little bit. So I saw no reason. Was a massive sophisms, which I love. I saw no reason to doubt the truth of arithmetic, but I did know that arithmetic can be made to embrace all traditional pure mathematics. And he talks about accepting arithmetic and geometry through Mills, or Mill. But it seemed to me that pure empiricism must lead to skepticism rather than Mill's support of received scientific doctrines. This is just what I thought of. I don't want to digress too much, but I'll just test this out and you can see if it is interesting. So when he talks about the kind of revolution in his thoughts in 1898, it's too much of I'm just going to say a sentence, much of a digression. The kinship that the turn of the 20th century and the turn of the 21st century has, as far as things in the world and how fucking one-to-one it is. Think about 1898. They're starting to have cars, industry. People are stopping like subsistence living and going on to this next level of industry and working at factories, cars. Everything is changing. Literally everything is changing. We're starting to live in cities. And think about the turn of the 21st century. Okay. Everything, technology, information. We're starting to live in cities. The internet. Like, think about like how going from you buy things from a guy at a store who made it himself or a farmer to you're buying things from a company because they make things on a fucking on a conveyor belt, right? Like that in itself just changes the world, right? And then how the internet is changing the world. Like, just
Mhm.
think about the like, I largely believe a lot of people think that their generation is just the fucking one. Like, shit's going down, man. Like, the world's ending, right? But like, and I remember arguing with Mickey about this. Maybe you were there just playing devil's advocate, but like there's so many times we forget history when I think we could map almost one to one everything that is changing, what has changed in the past,
Yeah.
and its identical nature. And I said this this is something I haven't heard anyone say, but I feel like it's a fucking epic thought. To be crass, is that um, we can only see the negative outcomes of AI, meaning the things it will replace, but we cannot conceive of the positives. And
Right.
because of that, we will always look at change, technology and change from a negative point of view as far as the future goes, when in actuality, we just don't know what the positive is. So having some preconceived notion is uh, is a logical flaw. What is that called? Is it, it it it's an incorrect way to view anything.
Mhm.
Illogical way to look at the future ever,
Mhm.
until that negative externality
Maybe
comes to fruition.
perhaps it is a conservative bias. I don't know. I'm sure there's a real like, it's a psychological thing that I just want to stick with what I've been doing because it's comfortable.
Since the minute we went from, even let's just say 1700 or the 100 BC, the minute, no, whenever, like, whatever the first like farming tool, right, where we were able to plow,
Mm-hmm.
um, farmers feared that they would be out of a job, or people that made this first sewing machine was all mechanical back in the 17, whatever it was.
Yeah.
There was a fear at that time. Well, what are the people going to do without that job? And somehow the world has gotten better and better every single time. It's never been like, oh fuck, new technology, this sucks.
Yeah.
But still, we have this undying negative outlook on. I mean, and we're in a, in conservative bias. Even kids with it, they all have computers and such. Like, they would love the next new technology. That's all. These people live and die by technology. Just such a interesting digression.
Mm-hmm.
Super off topic though. Anyways, your turn.
Um.
He talks about deductive systems, science arranging. Math is deductive. It has challenges. Oh, and that's when he gets into electrodynamics.
People believe axioms because of their consequences. I think that has to do with the deductive system you're talking about, where like you can, on the one hand, you can like, come up with axioms and then do certain things, and that's all great. But a lot of times axioms don't exactly make sense to people, at least as he was talking about it. And then it's that, oh well, once you get down to the consequences of it, people are like, oh well, your conclusion is good, so you must have had good starting.
It's all post it, and this is something a lot of, like, I've thought about recently in my life. I think everyone post hoc rationalizes, including myself.
Yeah.
Everything is asserted. Yeah, like you said, here's the section here. Fresh ideas are axioms, thus disproving Kant's assertion that plus 5 equals 12 is synthetic. I began to think it was probable that philosophy had erred on adoption of heroic remedies for intellectual difficulties. Let's see. Errors are liable to arise from to the epistemological. Oh, here's why should I believe this set of propositions versus what is the smallest and logical simplest group of propositions, simplest group of propositions this set of propositions can be deduced.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that? Yeah, so it's page 129 for me, so skipping ahead just one. So it's electro dash dynamics. So it's the third page of this section for me.
Uh-huh.
And he says, why should I believe this set of propositions is quite different from the logical question of what is the smallest and logically simplest group of propositions from which this set of propositions can be deduced.
Mm-hmm.
What is your take on that? How can you elucidate that at all for me?
So, if we're to believe in the truth of pure mathematics, it cannot solely be because we believe in the truth of the set of premises. Yeah, so the reason that we believe in like the electrodynamics is not because the equations make a lot of sense to us, but because they pan out in the real world on the one hand to correspond to experience a whole lot, and second, you can make use of them. You can make predictions, and then nope. Well, the fucking predictions were good. They had good, predictable consequences. Yeah, it's not like they came up with Maxwell's equations and you could just look at it and go, oh, of course that's right. No, that's not how that worked. You would be first introduced to it and you'd be like, all right, I see that. And then, of course, that's how people kind of expect you to do it. That's how you end up doing it in school. They're just like, here's the equations, here's some fucking numbers, bobbity boop, get your results. But the way that I think science works in the real world is people go, well, here's an equation, and you're like, okay, well, can you show me why this works? And then you go, well, if I, push this stuff here and push that stuff there, then this other thing will go over here. And then they go, oh, all right, and then they'll try to do it themselves. They'll go like, I also saw that result. Well, according to this equation, if I do these other things, then this other result will happen. Well, let's see what happens. And then you do the other things, and of course that other thing does happen. And so I guess knowing that the premises were good was not a result of just knowing the premises were good in the first place. It was a result of the consequences, I guess, being good. Like, we believe in the consequences, and then that ends up making us believe the equations.
So we check the outcome.
Yeah. Yep.
Fuck. That was deeper than I thought. Let me think about that.
Yeah, the epistemological question, why should I believe this set of propositions, is quite different from the logical question, what is the smallest and logically simplest group of propositions from which this set of propositions can be deduced? So there's like a logical question, which is, can we get the smallest number of axioms? And then there's the epistemological question, why should I believe in these axioms?
So deducing from the outcome and then looking at the propositions for truth. To properly go about metaphysics, you should then investigate premises in and of themselves.
Say that again?
Sorry, I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
I was also listening and thinking at the same time, so.
Our reason for believing in logic is only inductive and probable.
Mm-hmm.
In spite of that fact, in their logical order, the propositions of the logic follow from the premises by pure deduction.
And then there's the next sentence, which I think might answer, well. This is, God. Yeah, so I was, I'm going to digress for a second. I was writing something before this on something totally different, but it just, because I knew there was something important to be saying. I just didn't know when to say it or how to say it exactly. Just like, that he just goes on to be like, well, here's all these concerns. And you're like, well, what does that all amount to? And then he goes, well, I think here's the problem, which is I think this point is important. Here it is. Because we don't want to, conflate the epistemological concern from the logical one. So I could see if you conflate the epistemological one for the logical one, you could go, oh, well, because I believe in the consequences, I think that all the premises are exactly as small as they can be. We can't come up with any other we couldn't come up with any other axioms for this consequence because we believe in the consequence. Whereas on the other hand, the conflating the logical into the epistemological one, I think it's something like going like, well, these are the smallest amount of axioms that give us this consequence, and so therefore it must be the right one and the only one that we should believe in. Whereas you could come up with possibly, slightly different axioms and get slightly different consequences.
So, like, let me use an example, if I understand this right. So, I live in Texas. We have a governor. He is can't walk, right? And if I say governors can't walk, they move about in wheelchairs. If I were to test that on the Texas governor, I'd be like, wow, true.
Yeah.
When really the fundamental is the Texas governor cannot walk, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I have now reduced it down to a person instead of a concept governor. I guess a person is a concept as well. But I've deducted and hyper-focused my logic. And through that kind of elucidated what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I have the axiom that governors are in wheelchairs. And then there is a consequence somewhat of that when somewhat of a consequence.
I falsely got an accurate outcome based on testing it on Texas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
When it could, and let's say half of the country, right, is non-walking governors, but I don't know that percentage. And I tested on 10 of them. I go, wow, 10 of them. I tested all of them. They couldn't walk. Must be true.
Mm-hmm.
When really it's these 10 that I have tested, as opposed to and broadening it to this concept of governor that means that you cannot walk from that premise. For just from the fact that they are a governor, I know that they are unable to walk. When really that is that is a very broad and not a. I haven't reduced it down to its lowest common denominator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or it wouldn't be a lowest common denominator, but that's beside the point.
I get what you're saying though. Like you're trying to come up with the axioms that provide for a more robust system.
Best described.
Yeah, because if you take your system and you go to Arizona or something, your axioms are they're gonna fall apart there. And so I guess on the I could refute anyone who says that about Arizona because you have
I tested it in Texas and it's right there.
Yes.
Before I even ask Arizona, I could apply my logic and say, don't even bother looking in Arizona. I tested it here in Texas, and look, there's our outcome.
Yeah.
I'm right.
And so that's the problem that you're conflict. So the logical, value to saying, simply all governors are in wheelchairs is because it's very simple. You only have one statement. You don't have to go, and some other ones don't or whatever. You just say simply, and then you go, and then sure to some extent you had some epistemological belief, way to verify your proof. But if you go, because it's so simple that clearly this has to be, truth is, very, unified and simple. It shouldn't be complicated. And then you go, well, I shouldn't even have to test anywhere else. I'm now conflating the fact that it's simple and straightforward with the fact that whether it's true or not. So that I think if we say it that way, it's a conflation of using the logical principle for your epistemological one. Yeah. And then the other one is saying that, I guess that the other direction we go, it worked, so therefore this must be, the only possible axioms I can have. So you go, oh well, I tested out my hypothesis that all governors are in wheelchairs, and well, it worked here, which means that the only axioms I could possibly have are the ones that I do have. So we're gonna stick with that.
Right.
Um, yeah. So yes, okay.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, because the consequences, Occam's razor. Yeah, so the next paragraph,
Yep.
which is
Whitehead.
interesting. The Occam's razor thing is it's sort of like that logical principle he was talking about in the paragraph we were just at, but he gets down to it at the bottom of this paragraph, which is wherever possible, substitute constructs out of known entities instead of or for inferences to unknown entities, which is, I mean, I guess with that, it's slightly different. It's just that we don't want to introduce new entities into our system. We can just basically take our instead of saying that there's different Legos, we can just say that what we're looking at is just a construct of Legos. If that analogy works.
I loosely follow.
Yeah. Because the more types of things we start involving in our world, the more, I guess, prone to error it is because we're saying too many things. We want to try to stay doing a lot with a little.
I think that's a good way to put that.
Now, this principle of abstraction was interesting, although his principle was actually not to abstract, which was funny. So where he's talking about, this is where he talks about symmetrical and transitive relations, that there must be some, quality of the items in the relation that is we can abstract from. That he's just like, you don't have to do that all the time. Sometimes it's just a fucking relation. Don't try to make it something else.
Choral and causal.
Do you? I can remind you about what it kind of make the principle kind of makes. I mean, it's a very easy thing to do to slip into, and it's interesting that it's not interesting. It's significant that he's opposing it. So just the transitive one's more interesting, but I don't know if you're looking at this, but we get if A is related to B.
Yep.
And then B is related to C. Then we get that A is related to C. And now this is now we say that R is transitive. It's trans. All right. It's transitive. And then he wants to say that, well, the principle of abstraction then says, well, there must be something about A, B, and C that they have some common quality that allow them to, be a part of this, that allows this relation to be transitive. But, say some, and you could say, abstraction, the abstraction here says something like, well, I don't know, A, B, and C are all, in this set called X. This is a bad X. But Russell wants to go, this inference. Oh, God.
Sorry.
Russell wants to say that this movement, this one right here, is a bad one. Bad. Let's do bad. It's bad.
Russell go boo.
He goes boo. Yeah, I don't know. That was just an interesting one, which is something I always like. That's something I literally use as a heuristic. And sometimes, at least I like to think that I'm doing that. Is I go, oh well, I see that these are all fitting together in a certain way, and so they must all have some kind of common thing in common.
Well, so that's a interesting. Have you ever heard the concept that humans, a flaw and benefit of humans is we see patterns in lots of places where there are none.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
So this occurs in for example, and kind of a dichotomy is, it is, we as a society say it is okay, your hand up, okay, when a black person gets one bad interaction with a cop and then goes, cops are bad. Right? Mm-hmm. But on the other side, we shame white people because they have multiple bad interactions with a black person. Even the idea that they could think that black people are late or steal or lazy or n words or whatever,
Or they
right?
smell like coconut.
Keep it going, right? Chicken. But we would deny that. But it's a fundamental thing about humans, right? That like incels, like so many dudes just think that, what's her body count? She's a slut, They don't understand how to talk to women, but they have a couple bad interactions. They think women are gold diggers, and it's just like emoting, saying, even though you're saying these things in a Discord with a bunch of guys, the fact that you do that means you're comfortable going out in the world and probably say it by accident in front of women all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing and creating this system where, based on the patterns you've seen, a couple of them, that you bring them those facts into pairs, especially if we see something in media, rich divorce ends up with the woman getting money, so then we think that divorce ends in a lot of alimony to women. And I looked it up recently. This is such a digression, that like it's like less than 10% of marriages end in alimony. Like it's not even and those, when they do get alimony, it's because of kids. Like it's such a rare thing.
Yeah.
But there's this trope about women that
Yeah.
they're gold diggers and they
Uh-huh.
take money and divorce and they're just awful. But like, and that's I'm just kind of building on his idea that, right, that choral causal, that we see a pattern and we just abstract from that a concept about the concepts in the pattern, and think it always to be true, and that we don't even need to test it in the future. And that if we see something that disrupts that, we think that that is an outlier to our data, that is a on the graph that need not belong, because we already have tested the axioms, and our axioms, as by definition, are supposed to be something fundamental and unchangeable, first order. Sorry, that was a lot, and I don't have a good way to wrap it up.
So yeah, so I guess what's happening is we see a relation between I guess, well, in our example, person and a particular activity, and then we go, and then we end up attributing that that activity or behavior to the group. When we don't have to do that, we could just go, well, it's just about this person. Now I guess
Right. Well, it's not even and that's a tough leap right there, because what we have to be able to say it's just that person, we have to deny reality to that person, because they may see in media more women than they ever interact get divorces with money.
Oh yeah,
They
no,
may see
I'm saying
thousands on TV.
I'm saying from the
Well,
point of
I understand what you were saying. You were saying it just fine. Sorry, I wasn't saying you were saying it incorrect, but to communicate that, right?
yeah.
For that person to accept what you say, that they should reduce it to that one person, they have to deny their reality of seeing the Texas governor of who it doesn't walk, right? Or what have you. Sorry. It's just such a human trait.
Yeah.
We have a tough time. Like, it's very, very tough to walk someone away from. Like me, I'm doing it right now. I'm saying that people in discords that I am in assume a lot about women, when they may just say it around me and they don't elsewhere, right? So even the reverse is true.
Yes.
Officially mind fucked ourselves. So let's continue. Oh, cardinal number and quantum physics. Cardinal number. What is the cardinal number?
A cardinal number, well, is just any. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's just a whole number, really. It's either that or the largest number in a set. I believe it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. denoting quantity 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to ordinal first, second, third. Oh, yeah. It's a number that denotes quantity in that position. So like
quantity, not position.
you like mass, like 5 pounds is cardinal, but position, is I guess it's ordinal, yeah. Because you go, oh, it's at position 5 feet, but 5 feet x, 10 feet y. You're telling it it's the third, fifth on the right and 10th to the top. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say I let's see how many pages I had. So I didn't I don't have any notes for the next
A
five
cardinality of a
four
set
pages.
is the measure of the number of elements of the set. Okay.
I don't have any notes for the next 4 pages for me, which is I guess about 5 paragraphs until it gets to the paragraph that starts with, "At this point, I propose to digress for a moment. My own views on the subject of relation in the past were clear." If you want to find that.
Well, there is a point in here about cardinal numbers that's a little funky. That
Yeah, hit me with anything you got in between.
yeah. So we want to well, what is the number 2? And what the number 2 ends up being, if you look at my screen, is just the thing that all these sets have in common.
It's so funny to me that you like to write. Basically, everything you do is in. Like you could just open up like a cursor and write, and then draw around. You know what I mean? Like you could do the letters and the words and the symbols,
Mm-hmm.
and then like you could draw around like typed font, but you choose to draw the, like, I guess what we would traditionally say.
Oh, well,
Right,
yeah, because
like
I
with a
don't want to have
pencil.
to switch over into the whatever the text thing is. I'm not very
Interesting.
proficient with this program, Sasha. But even then, I would prefer to use my pen and actually just write it out, just because I don't have to switch back and forth. Yeah, but
Yeah,
so
like
the
it.
number 2
You know what I
really
mean?
is just what
Never mind.
this set has in common with this set, which has in common with this set, which is that they have this many elements.
So the you're gonna, if you went, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to grasp this, the cardinal number thing. Look, I get, um,
This is
it's
2.
gonna require a couple fundamental blocks that I don't have right now,
Sure.
or may never have.
Right,
So,
like X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I'll try this again. So, just so you can see if you can get the pattern. The number 3 just is the concept of the set of these things. Of this set, it has 3 things. This set has 3 things. And all the rest of the things in this set are a set that has 3 things. And that just is the number 3. And then you get number 2 is just the set of things that are sets that have 2 things in them. And then this has 2 things in
gotcha.
them.
Okay.
And this
Now I
has
get
2
it.
things in them.
Crass and ass.
Yes. Now, I imagine this kind of becomes a little difficult once you start talking about like 2.6, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, whoa, hey, Jesus Christ.
But
Fucking hell.
we're not there. We haven't even gotten to addition yet, so. Because then,
Well,
like,
teacher,
what?
what's my homework?
Sure, what's x
I was just
squared
kidding. Sorry, bad joke.
equals 5. What is x? I know I have really good handwriting. Yeah, that's all that's happening. And so then you get stuff like, he mentions this later, like all the orange is not actually its own concept. It's not like universal per se. It's more just the set of things that happen to have a thing in common, like oranges.
Is that new? Is that like Like I would agree with that, obviously.
A basketball.
Like, didn't he cover that? That colors earlier in the actual book, he says colors don't exist until he named them.
Yeah. I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised. Um, yeah.
Like we talked about that,
He
I
probably
think.
said them. He probably said it. Yes. Oh, it's too cold before. Now I'm too hot.
It's all this fucking math. It's getting the going.
I know, dude. It's getting my loins warm.
getting your loafers spruced.
Okay.
That booty pasta.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. I couldn't remember if we had that before.
No, it's interesting. I was able to follow, which I'm happy.
Okay. She said you don't get it for another couple. You don't have anything for another couple. Let me see where I.
Until the paragraph starts with, "At this point, I propose to digress for a moment."
Oh, one where he's like, well, what really? He almost makes a mention of metaphysics when he says, well, what really is there? Yeah. I have been
Right.
speaking hitherto of what is not necessary to assume as part of the ultimate constituents of the world. But logical constructions, like all other constructs, require materials, and it is this time to turn to the question as to what these materials are to be. This question, however, requires a preliminary
No, no,
discussion.
no.
Nope.
Wrong paragraph.
Okay.
Wait. Hold on. There's a couple. You might be right.
It requires a preliminary discussion of logic and language and their relation to what they try to represent. That's the end.
Fuck. I hate that we have different page numbers.
I mean, you could tell me the page number and I can look at it.
Yeah, if you're looking at my.
I also have the same book pulled up as you, so you can tell me that page number.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So fuck no. So, yeah, if you control F for at this point, comma, or just I propose to digress for a moment.
Did you say 181?
No, 138.
Okay, 138.
So I don't know where you were. I think we were in different sections.
Okay. Okay, yeah, this is after the talk about, the influence of language that has on philosophy. This was a very interesting couple paragraphs.
Yes.
You get the intro, so this is where we get the, this is part of his, think about abstraction, I think. Influence of vocabulary towards Platonic pluralism of things and ideas. So that's where you get, we want to talk about this. Words first come up because we happen to see a certain similarity between them, and then we start talking about them, separate from what the things they apply to actually are, and then you just start talking about the thing itself, and then you get this weird Platonic, this disembodied universal, and so you get the Platonic pluralism of things and ideas. That's the influence of vocabulary, and the influence of syntax had to do with that everything could be put into the subject-predicate form, and that ends up forcing you or really influencing you towards a substance and attribute or property type of, I guess, metaphysics. Which then he also seemed to say that it would lead towards monism, which I guess monism is that you just have one type of substance and it has properties. And then syntax also leads you towards talking about words and not about the actual things themselves.
Right.
I
would concur with everything you said. I really like the introduction as well, where it's basically the equivalent of the Bill Burr when you're in the shower and you're cringing about an old thought, because this is something I would like to hear from more philosophers, right? This is something very, very almost consequential to what I like about the way Russell looks at the world. Is I would always say about myself, if I were to look at my Facebook and go back for every 5 years I go back, I just look at who is that? I just don't I would probably disagree with everything that person said. That is me 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But it's just a simple, you grow over time, you people are anyone who's like, oh, you changed your mind. Yeah, that's what you should do. The way he says this, I can just picture it's like you could replace the introduction of the paragraph or the first couple sentences with just cringing, just cringe. My own views on the subject were less clear than I thought about them. By no means the views of my critics were supposed to see them. Owing to the lack of clearness in my own thoughts, I was unable to convey my meaning. The subject is difficult, but now I'm more clear. I think certain points are clear to me. At the time, when I wrote the blah blah blah, I had not seen the necessity of types. That's such a I'm showing my underbelly kind of section,
Yeah.
um,
Like I'm
and
wrong.
very
That
human.
happens.
I mean, I don't recall anything like this in any other philosopher's writing. Maybe we have, and I'm just being too excited by it.
Oh
But
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. The Kant and the Hegels are very proud of their work and very boastful.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
which on its face makes me like at the I have the world figured out. Here it is. Tell you, like just um
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. Yeah, Bradley actually was a little bit like this. If you remember from the introduction of his appearance in reality, he was like, "Well, I thought about these things, and really, I could definitely be wrong, but I really only hope that I've convinced you to think
right,
about stuff. And
right,
I'm not giving you the truth. I just here's some interesting thoughts. Just do with them what you want. I'm only interested in getting you to think about stuff,
right,
and
right.
not
I'm here to propose
yeah,
ideas, and I think that's the way Russell concludes the last page of this book, of this writing, is just like the end of an epic.
mm-hmm.
The way he ties together how because he says it just like you said it, right? That I'm not here to say I have definitive answers or any. Here's a view of the world, um, and use it as you know. Let me ask. This has to be written and not an auditory because it is so dense. It has wordplay. It has a lot of things that are different from what seems to be his auditory. Um, what would you call that? What does a professor do?
Oh, like a lecture or
Lecture. It's
seminar.
different from the lecture. The lecture is the right word. Different from more the lectures he right, or which is the basis of the logical atomism, right?
Yeah,
They're written lectures.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm imagining. I actually don't know. I'm sure that said at the beginning of the book what this was. If this was an essay, I mean, it's literally twice as long as all the other sections. So I'm imagining he just. I'm pretty sure this is just an essay that he wrote after like a
It has
note.
to be. It can't be a lecture because no one would have a lecture this short, right? And also he ended all his like the literally the book ends with so next, like he literally has a chapter is the bell is about to ring section. Next time, guys, we're gonna talk about.
Yeah,
Do you have any questions? And it's such a it's like it's something never see in a book.
yeah.
That's what I grabbed from this section. Now you were talking more to then I would consider my next page, but the next couple paragraphs, right, gets into the swapping of substituting words and their propositions without making nonsense
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, I did
on
think.
the science.
Oh, yeah. The science thing where you could swap the like you just all we're doing is all philosophy is really going to do much is when interpreting science to philosophy. When interpreting science into philosophy, it is necessary that the structure is preserved. The propositions in science are still to remain the same and held as true, but philosophy can come up with different meanings for the same terms and preserve the structure of the propositions. Um, and that structure, scientific structure, is destroyed by monistic logic. Uh, and I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to look into more. Probably to get a better idea of that, we'd want to read. Well, we need to read some amount of Bradley's logic, but because I'm not totally sure what he means by saying that. I don't know if I totally agree with him because I don't see his reasoning behind saying that structures, like the structure of scientific propositions, is destroyed by a monistic logic.
You don't agree, or you don't understand?
I just don't see what his. I'm trying to. I don't remember him saying what his meaning was, or like what he meant. I don't think he really had
what
an
his
argument.
truth was.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think here. So I guess.
Sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. I wasn't laughing at you.
So the point of like logical atomism is that there are certain. Oh, okay. So that's the problem with like. Well, I guess monistic logic is that there is one ultimate thing that is true, and that is it. Whereas the atomic logic has. Oh, you can have a bunch of disparate things that are true or not true, and they you could change certain things from being true to false, and it would be fine. We would still have the world, and there would still be the totality of the world.
There's still facts.
Yeah, there's still things going on. We don't. Separate things are true. We're not just saying like, because I guess in the monistic logic, anytime you're saying anything, it's just saying.
You're cutting out a little. I don't know if you have your suppressor on high.
So I think in the monistic logic, anytime you're saying anything, you're actually only ever saying something about one thing, which is the truth, and you're not pertaining to like. So like when I say my foot hurts, I'm actually saying there's the totality of truth, and there's some tiny part of that in which my foot hurts or whatever. And I'm really trying to say something about one thing, which is or a part of one thing. Whereas Russell wants to say, well, when you say your foot hurts, it's because you have a fucking foot and it hurts. And
it's actually everything is a shorthand, basically.
I don't know about shorthand, but
to rephrase it, right? There's a world I live in temporally, and I am a human, and on this human body, I have a leg that has a foot. Like that's what I mean by shorthand. I mean, there's more baked. There's so much. There's baked into that sentence. My foot hurts. Is a lot of presuppositions which we should examine.
Oh, sure. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the thing to which the sense of my sentence, my foot hurts, is not the totality of the world. It's just my foot, and it being hurting. It doesn't make something. It's not like a. It's not saying something about ultimate truth, just in a small way. I think, and I don't exactly get how structure of scientific propositions is destroyed by monistic logic. I'm gonna try to talk this out loud. So one of the things that happens in, I mean, I think Russell says that science does a lot, is it either makes logical constructs out of the things that we see, or
epistemic
inferences to things, makes inferences to things. Now, it was interesting to think about the matter one. The matter one was very particular, which you have that there's some type of, it was a while ago, but it's definitely relevant to what's going on. Yeah, okay. Traditional matter is that no two pieces of matter can be in the same space at the same time, and no one piece of matter can be in two different spaces at the same time. And so then, and he wants to say that's not because we actually saw that ever happen in the world. We made that up. So you can say like, oh, you threw one billiard ball at another billiard ball, and then you saw that the one pushed the other out of the way. You might infer that, well, all things that are made out of matter are, they can't be in the same space at the same time because they'll just push each other out of the way. But then you get, into kind of the grayer areas, which he didn't talk about this, but this is something I was thinking about. Oh, I took salt and I put it in water, and all of a sudden, it's all in the same spot at the same time, and it's really kind of an ad hoc movement to say, well, actually, on the smallest level of things, they are separate atoms still, and it's just all the salt particles have moved all the water particles out of the way, and it's just so minusculely different that you can't actually see
that. Almost sounds post hoc, right? Though this kind of year.
Yeah. Because oh well, that
you started with nothing from premise or proposition A, which is matter together at the same time and using the inference from two billiard balls,
Yeah.
then it is totally illogical or a fallacy to then go, well, I was talking about atoms, right? It's transcendental.
Yeah, it's a kind of a fetish with your initial idea, right? You just had this thought, and oh well, now I need to make it work. It's just and there's at a small level, they can't actually be in the same spot at the same time.
I like that, and not in a like I'm trying to be funny kind of way. Your use of the word uh, uh, fetish.
Yeah.
Not that it's funny, haha, sex, but like it's truly what it is you have some sort of uh, illogical or presuppositional attachment to X,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have carried X with you. This X being an axiom
Mm-hmm.
to a place it does not belong, or that you have inserted it, and it is only due to convenience or uh, fetishization to this axiom.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That was a well said sentence.
Oh, thanks. And so I guess, and then so his example of like where I guess, well, what philosophy? So where you have like science tells you that all the difference in colors that you see really correspond to different wavelengths of light. And I'm trying to get what monistic logic would do to say that that doesn't work. I mean, part of it has to do with, I guess, in okay. I guess what it partially is that doing science, you end up making logical constructions out of things that don't actually exist. Whereas a monistic and you're just gonna kind of go with them because they're useful. Whereas a monistic logic says, no, 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 no. There's only one thing that's true, and that's the whole entire thing. And maybe that's what it is. I'm not really
You
sure.
lost me in the analogy at the second half there.
Yeah, I'm losing myself too. I don't really know. I'm trying to just found. Maybe I could try to find.
Yeah, you're just kind of talking through it. Yeah, maybe if you draw it out.
Because that was something I didn't really quite get. I mean,
Keep building on it. I think you were halfway there. Just build on that.
yeah. Let's see if I can find. I'll find a paragraph, and then we can read.
While you're doing that, I do love that his only post note or subscript is I am much indebted to my friend Wittgenstein on this matter. I mean, what a fucking good, what a guy.
Pal.
I do not accept all his doctrines, by the way.
Yeah.
But my dad, I know he fucked all those kids, and I'm not into that. But he's pretty smart, and I did like Billie Jean. Wordplay. Oh. Mm.
Okay. Yeah, I found it. Okay. And then let me Control F this so it can be on the same page. Unless structure is preserved. Page 146. That 2/3 down. But actually, it's just this middle paragraph. I'll just read it out loud.
36.
146.
Go ahead.
Okay, the question of interpretation is of importance for almost every philosophy, and I am not at all inclined to deny that many scientific results require interpretation before they can be fitted into a coherent philosophy. The maxim of constructions versus inferences is itself a maxim of interpretation. But I think that any valid kind of interpretation ought to leave the detail unchanged, though it may give a new meaning to fundamental ideas. In practice, this means that structure must be preserved, and a test of this is that all the propositions of a science should remain, though new meanings may be found for their terms. A case in point, on a non-philosophical level, is the relation of physical theory of light to our perceptions of color. This provides different physical occurrences which correspond to different seen colors, and thus make the structure of the physical spectrum the same as that of what we look at a rainbow. Unless structure is preserved, we cannot validly speak of an interpretation, and structure is just what is destroyed by a monistic logic. I mean,
Structure revealed by a present by observation is exactly that which actually exists. That's a fucking.
so I'm wondering why he doesn't really. I mean, he just says it. He doesn't really make an argument. I don't know enough about monistic logic to really know like how it would destroy.
Let's look it up. I bet your buddy has a video on it. I don't know.
Logical
No.
monism is the view that there is only one correct logic, or alternatively, the view that there is only one genuine consequence relation. Only one right answer to the question on whether and why a given argument is valid. Only one collection of valid inferences or of logical truths. Okay, so I guess the problem is that then this is a logical monism then is just fixating on, if you could say, an axiom actually, and not being concerned with the consequences. Whereas Russell wants to go, well, primarily we agree to say that we know something or that we should believe it because it has good consequences, and we can do that in multiple different logics, and we can really like. I guess the thing that happens in science is that we discover new logics that happen to work because it's just whatever is going on. Like if we try to be a monistic logic, we'd have, and if we were Einstein and we were trying to do monistic logic, we'd have to get rid of quantum physics and vice versa because they're not exactly.
Because it's theoretical.
Well, it's because their logics don't fit together. I believe. I don't
because they assume things in their.
It has to do with gravity. The way that I just know that the way that gravity works in general relativity does not work the way that it does in quantum physics, so they contradict each other.
How so? That's interesting. Tell me about that. See, I knew you knew more. You fucking liar.
I mean, I don't know the math, but
yeah, I'm not asking for the equation. Tell me about the concept. Like,
yeah, generally
what does that mean?
You know, like if you have like two objects, fucking planets next to each other, there's whatever the certain equation is that takes into account the mass and their distance, and it'll tell you the forces, that cause them to move towards each other or whatever. And we can kind of, and then it was proved by experience that, well, not just two planets, but a lot of different things, that they did happen to move towards each other at a certain time, and that, well, this is even Newtonian actually. I'm not even talking about fucking general relativity. Oh God, but that, like, I don't know. There's a.
Would it be fair to say that, at that time, the gravity from one large entity at such a small scale, we're doing so many orders of magnitude different levels of math that at the planetary, two planets or an asteroid or what have you, that there's probably congruity between the two, but it's so distant that like they're just the effects are.
It's so minuscule that you wouldn't be able to see it when you're doing the math.
Yeah, it's like when you get a globe. If you were to have a real globe of the Earth, it would be smoother than the smoothest 8-ball ever. As far as topographics, did you know that? That's a little
Say it
factoid.
again. Sorry.
So, if you were to have a real, you know how you touch a globe, it's raised for mountains.
Yeah.
If you were to actually have a globe of the Earth that was topographically accurate,
oh yeah,
it would be smoothest than the smoothest 8-ball ever made.
Yeah.
I had a point, but I decided to go on the factoid. The factoid was going to bring about a larger point. But it's not. It wouldn't be useful to have a smooth fucking it's topographically accurate. Can't you? Well, you won't be able to feel, but there are mountains there. But it's irrelevant because at that scale, we need to talk about things and to be useful.
We need to be able to differentiate them.
Right.
Yeah,
As
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I thought about that where it's just like or something along those lines. It made it.
yeah, and when you're human, if I were to tell you that gravity is point fucking light years per hour, right, or whatever, right? You'd be like, go fucking kill yourself. What's the like? Convert it for me, asshole. Right, but like, I mean, I'm assuming that the numbers are the same, which sounds like they aren't, which is fair. But we also don't talk in light years per feet. Yeah, sorry. This is a fucking
well,
quantum mechanics makes me want to, and physics makes me want to kill myself.
right. Well, here's a one paragraph answer to what is it about quantum mechanics that is incompatible with general relativity.
Perfect.
I haven't even read this, but we're gonna read it. As I understand the basic problem, classical general relativity, which is the theory developed by Einstein in 1915, is a theory where gravitational fields are continuous entities in nature. They also represent the geometric properties of four-dimensional spacetime. In quantum mechanics, fields are discontinuous and are defined by quanta. So there is no analog in conventional quantum mechanics for the gravitational field, even though the other three fundamental forces have now been described as quantum fields after considerable work done in the 60s to the 80s. Quantum mechanics is incompatible with general relativity because in quantum field theory, forces act locally through the exchange of well-defined quanta. Now, I'm not sure how much sense that just made to me or you.
Yeah, when you. So the only thing I latched onto there, as far as meaning, was the addition of the dimension of time. And if I were to abstract from that, which I should not do, but I'm going to, that I even used it in my example that light years, it's a completely different equation because it is literally taking in time and how time changes. Fuck, and we just added a new equation because yeah, fuck, this is just mind bending. It's in. I want to bend in my mind, but fuck, it's so. Let's unravel and go back to the book. I'm gonna die.
Also, I gotta head out of here soon. But I will be back on later tonight. I'm going to dinner.
Okay. You can see my screen, so we're.
We can also continue doing this later tonight, if you don't want to just.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you how much I had left. Like, yeah, so we stopped here, and I think the rest of it, like, I have 4 or 5 quotes from him that I just like wanted to dig into, and then wanted you to draw out for me symbols and types and classes without using without using symbols. I don't know what I meant there.
You want me to draw symbols without using symbols?
I don't always follow when you go X, italic R, Y, right? Like, I don't know without a compass. You need to, when you do that in the future, go like X equals, R italic equals, right? So I can follow. I know now the R, the relational, that makes sense to me, but only because it was defined.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and it's not your fault, right? Because you're just thinking a million miles an hour. Sometimes you'll go, the equals the C, and if I don't know the definition for the symbol without a reference, yeah. Anyways,
okay.
I'll let you go.
I got what you mean. Yeah, so I'll be back on. We can finish this up. This fucking beauty of a paper.
Good shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a fucking. Yes.
Yeah.
I almost think we should do there's got to be a reading of this online and go through like the last 2 pages and just listen to it. Just like it's so well written, the last 2 pages. Anyways.
Oh, actually, well, yeah, I can look at some stuff. I do have a. There's definitely stuff on this.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll talk to you in a couple hours.
Yeah, I'll be on. Take it easy, buddy.